Hello. Does taking cuttings really work to propagate your plants? I'm Ms. Zorab and this is Byther Farm. 6 months ago to the day I showed you 4 or 5 different methods for taking cuttings, and I put the plants out here in the shelter of the polytunnel, so the wind mostly comes across our site from that direction this way. So by putting them here, they were sheltered from the worst of the wind, but they could get the rain because they're open to the elements, and they've just sat here quietly doing their thing. So this morning we're looking to see how they've actually got on. Here's the hardy fuchsia, and there were 4 in here, and when I had a look earlier on, there was one that just had the tiniest little piece of root in it. So I've potted that one up separately. But very clearly there are new leaves growing on these 3. And if I dig down and take out one of the plants to have a look and see what the root is doing, if indeed it's doing anything. Let's have a look. So we have got tiny, I don't want to damage the roots, but there are tiny new roots growing. Let's pop that back in. So I'm making a hole and putting it in rather than just pushing it into the soil, because I don't want to risk damaging those fragile little roots. So I'm not going to do it with all 3 on this. I'll assume that as the other 2 are have got new leaves on them as well, they've got those tiny little root systems growing. Nothing coming out of the bottom yet, but this new growth is really good, and it says on here hardy fuchsia from the shrubbery, the 13th of September 2019, so that's 6 months ago to the day, which is why I thought it was worth looking today, because 6 months on they've started developing some roots. They haven't died off, they've seen themselves through the winter, and these will be having a good water in a bit and going back outside. And the rosemary is looking really healthy here. So there's at least 4 plants. I'm going to hold the compost really carefully so it doesn't all fall apart. Wow, look at that. That's a really good, healthy root system. I'm really pleased with that. So I think I'm going to pot those up individually. And there we go, there they are, potted up, ready to go back outside, grow on as plants. I've made sure that they've gone in about the same level they were when all 4 of them were in the pot. So that's 4 new rosemary plants growing away, and soon, not immediately, but soon I'll pinch out the growing tips to make them bush out more, because I want a bushier rosemary plant rather than just a tall, slender one. This is the broom that I took from the basil cuttings. Well, that one doesn't look like it's made it because it's very brown, and you can see when you can compare the dead brown stems to the green ones. So let's have a look at what's going on. And again, I'm going to try and stop all the compost from falling out. I'm breaking the soil away very carefully, so I can see one tiny little root. Well, it's obviously doing something because it's kept this plant going. So I'm going to get it into some fresh compost. Make a hole in it rather than just pushing it in, so that I don't damage that little root, that fragile root. And there we go, ready to go outside and to continue growing. And we'll have a look, we'll look at it again in another 6 months' time. And here's the bay. It says bay cooking 13th of the 9th. And these haven't died, so that's looking good. And I'm going to get that out. I can only see the tiniest of root systems, so I will get those back into a pot. I might add a bit of fresh compost because most of the nutrients from the previous lot of compost will either have been taken up by the plants or washed away by all the rain that we've had. So there we go, 2 bay plants. I'm really excited about this. I can see little growing buds on it, or on both of them. So hopefully this year these will really grow away, and by the autumn we'll be able to plant out some new bay cuttings. And then the last one is a mallet cutting. This is a Mahonia plant that I've done it on, and let's have a look and see how that is. Again, protecting it from all the compost falling out. Well, I can't really see any root development on that, but something must be going on okay to stop this from actually dying off. So I'm going to put this back in the compost, add a bit of fresh compost, and it can go back outside, and as with some of the others, we'll have a look again in the autumn. And while I'm out here in Cuttings Corner, I'll tell you about some of the other things that are out here. These are, I'm not sure if these are red currants or white currants. I guess I'll find out a bit later in the year. But I took these cuttings actually quite a long time ago, so about 18 to 20 months ago. These desperately need to go into the ground, and I have promised myself that this is the job that I will do this weekend. I will get these currants into the ground. They've got masses of roots on them, and they really are ready to be plants, four separate plants out in the garden on their own. And this is heavy. This is heavy. These are Josterberry cuttings, and I got these cuttings from Tony O'Neill in the autumn. So they've been in here for a little while, and they have got, I'm going to lift one to show you. I know what the roots on this are like because I've seen them fairly recently when I've checked. So they have got little, and I'm trying to, perhaps against my coat you can see the little white roots. So they've got roots coming all the way down the stem, so they're really forming very good root systems. Ever so pleased about this. Pop them back in really carefully, try not to damage the roots as I put them back in. There we go. So again, those ones are cuttings that were taken in the autumn, and that should give me 6 very nice Josterberry plants before too long. So many of the currant plants look really similar. It's definitely worth labelling them. Otherwise you get what I have with that currant of not being able to remember whether it's a red currant or a black currant or a white currant. Josterberries, I'm absolutely sure what those are, but I have now got some new labels, so I will get those in. And then over here I've got, well, this rose cutting came from my friend Jane, from her, huge rambling rose. So the actual flower's fairly small, but her plant is enormous. So she started these cuttings and they rooted. I've grown them on, and I've grown them so much that they've got roots hanging out the bottom. This is not ideal. I need to get this into its permanent position, and I think I know exactly where this will be going. This is another one that came from my friend Jane. You can see it's got plenty of new growth on it, and this too has got roots coming out of the bottom. It's ready to go into its final position. Now this one I'm not 100% sure about, but I think that this one is the Gertrude Jekyll rose. There's one there that definitely hasn't made it, it's just rotted, so that's obviously not going to it's not going to do anything, but what I will do is grow this on a bit more, and hopefully it will produce a small bud in the next couple of years, or maybe even this year, which will give me an idea of the colour. If it does start producing flower buds while it's still this small, I'll just take them off, and as soon as I can see what colour it is, that will tell me which plant it is, because there's a limited number of roses in this garden. There's quite a few, but I only have one of each colour variation. This one, which is doing so well, I'm really pleased about. You can see lots of new growth on top. Let's just tip it out and see what's going on there. So I'll remove these slugs which we don't need, but I can see it's got a really good healthy root system. Very pleased with this. This was a variety called New Dawn. And this rose was on my Amazon wish list, and Dramer very kindly sent it to me, and I took some cuttings on. I'm really pleased I write the date that things have happened on these labels. So the 16th of August last year I took these cuttings. I think I made a video about it, and if I did, I'll leave a link. So 16th of August I took the cuttings, and they're very definitely rooted. I've got 2 new plants there, so I can add 2 new Dawn roses to my archway and have those climbing up and over as well. I'm delighted. And this pot, which I usually use to keep the polytunnel doors shut properly, it says on my label climbing red rose, and this rose goes up and over the archway that goes into the vegetable garden, and that was taken from a cutting that I took as we moved out of our previous home. The rose was climbing up the wall. I really liked it, took a cutting. That's grown really well. Now I've got cuttings from it, which is very clear that they are doing fine. So there are some cuttings which haven't taken at all. That one's dried out and snapped off. This one, well, this one looks dead, but I don't know that it is. It feels quite firmly in the soil, so it could be that it's got roots and it's waiting to send out a new shoot from underneath the soil level. But 3 definite healthy new climbing red roses. And then finally these 2 little roses. Well, I know exactly what these are. They're what I call peaches and cream, and I took these cuttings on the 31st of May last year. And it's a little tiny patio rose, so it's got small leaves, small flowers, but it's prolific in its flowering, and they are pink and cream. They start out pink and fade to cream, or they start cream and fade to pink. I can't remember which round it is, but basically we have pink and cream flowers on the plant at the same time. It's a really pretty little rose, very delicate in colour and in stature. And so, wherever you are in the world and whatever you've got planned for today, I hope it's a good one. And I also hope you'll join me again next time.